When I was young, I dated Jasper. For 3 months. We broke up. He thought I was too well behaved, not fun enough. I tried hanging out with my child best friend for a couple of weeks, and she, blowing a smoke ring, advised me to just stick to my books. I didn't have what it took to be a bad girl. I accepted reality. After deeply reflecting on my youthful, naive, love is all you need misconception, I decisively found a rich heir. The rich heir's name was Marcus. He was rich, generous, and handsome. The only downside was his many exes and numerous female confidants. The moment I received Marcus's proposal ring, I received an ultrasound scan showing his confidant was 8 weeks pregnant. I sat in the coffee shop, lost in thought for a long time, and finally said with sincerity, I'm just so deeply in love with Marcus. I can't pull myself away. Why don't you have the baby? I might be young, but I don't mind being a stepmother. I swear, I was being completely sincere when I said that, but it seems his confidant took it as sarcasm. Seeing that I wouldn't leave Marcus voluntarily, she began to recount their past, how they went to Paris to see the Eiffel Tower, climbed snow-capped mountains together, and spent New Year's Eve together. How Marcus would be on a video call with me 1 second saying he missed me, and the next, after hanging up, he'd be entangled with her. Her storytelling skills were excellent. I felt like I was listening to a poetic novel. After listening quietly for over 10 minutes, I glanced at the time and politely interrupted her. I'm sorry. I have to get back to work. Her expression instantly became a colorful mess. She stared at me, speechless. I put on my coat, wrapped my scarf, and turned to leave. Are you that shameless? You're just going to cling to Marcus? A woman whose entire style screams wife material. Do you really think a rich heir like Marcus, who has seen countless beautiful women, would actually be interested in you? Her voice was sharp. The once bustling coffee shop fell silent. I stopped and looked back at her, agitated. Her expression was a little contorted, but a beauty is a beauty. Even a contorted one was far more beautiful than me. I smiled, but in the end, said nothing. I really didn't want to break up with Marcus. After all, among all the men I knew, he had the best overall package. His family was wealthy. He had a cheerful personality. And he was generous to me. Other than being a philanderer, he had no other flaws. But which rich man wasn't a philanderer? He loved to party, have fun, and find confidants. It didn't matter. As long as I was his official girlfriend, and the woman he wanted to marry, that was enough. I had a clear understanding of my own situation. If I broke up with Marcus, it would be impossible for me to find someone of his caliber again. In the elevator, I carefully examined my reflection in the doors. A woolen scarf, a mid-length wool coat, paired with snow boots. My entire outfit screamed simple, certainly a far cry from fashionable, and perfectly in line with the stereotype of a good wife type. I remembered my best friend's assessment of me. Your personality is too dull. You could never be a femme fatale who seduces men. You're only good at book smarts, not flexible. The best you can hope for is to pass the civil service exam and become a low-level public servant. You'll never be a successful woman. If you want to turn your life around, the only way is to play the good woman card. While you're still young and have the assets, find a rich man. A rich heir is fine. A self-made man is also fine. Be attentive and considerate to them. Most importantly, you have to be generous and virtuous, but you have to hurry. A woman's prime years are few. When you get older, no matter how gentle, considerate, or generous you are, rich men won't be interested in you anymore. Thinking of this, I looked at the ring on my middle finger and sighed. All I hoped for now was that no more trouble would arise before I married Marcus. As long as we were married, I could accept it whether he had an illegitimate son or daughter. But sometimes, the things you fear most are the things that happen. Just before the end of the workday, I received a message from Marcus. He sent me an address and asked me to go over, saying it was a gathering with friends and he wanted to introduce me. This had never happened before. There were some things Marcus and I both knew but never spoke of. He and I were from different circles, with vastly different lifestyles. Marcus had divided his world into 2 sharply demarcated halves. When he wanted to have fun, he would party with his childhood friends, bringing this confidant or that one, living life to the fullest. When he was tired of playing, he would come back to me and enjoy my meticulous care. Did he love me? The answer, of course, was no. But he couldn't leave me. So even though my family background was ordinary and I didn't know how to dress, he would still, in certain impulsive moments, want to marry me. But that was all. He wouldn't take me to meet his friends, nor would he let me into his circle, because in his eyes, I wasn't presentable, and I was always tactful, never asking to meet his friends. After all, although I was well aware that I was reaching above my station with Marcus and accepted my subordinate position, I didn't want to become a topic of gossip, to give others the chance to look down on me to my face. On this point, Marcus and I had always had a tacit understanding, but today, he broke it. I rushed to the restaurant. The heating was on full blast. I had to take off my scarf and coat, draping them over my arm as I followed the waiter through a maze of corridors. Finally stopping at the door of a private room, I stood at the entrance, took a deep breath, and mentally prepared myself before pushing the door open. As it turned out, my mental preparation was insufficient. The room was lively, filled with young men and women. The first person I saw wasn't my boyfriend, Marcus. It was Jasper, at the center of the crowd. My first love. He was as handsome as ever, a diamond stud in his left ear, an air of defiance and wildness about him. Jasper. Jasper. I silently mouthed his name twice, then calmly looked away, searching for Marcus. He was sitting in a corner booth, chatting and laughing with a woman. In a moment of playful scolding, the woman raised her hand and gently tapped Marcus's forehead. It was intimate, sweet. I recognized her. She was Marcus's childhood friend. They grew up together and were very close. To describe their relationship in one sentence, it would be more than friends, less than lovers. I could understand. When you know someone too well, it's hard to take that next step. Afraid of losing even the friendship in the end, I was actually glad they weren't together. Otherwise, where would there be room for me in this game of love? I stood at the door for a long time, unnoticed. A familiar sense of helplessness began to rise from my bones. I felt like I was 18 again, happily going to a bar to find Jasper, only to feel nothing but helplessness and a sense of not belonging after pushing open the door to the private room. I was keenly aware that I was not of their world. Not then. Not now. Back then, I forced myself not to care because I loved Jasper. Now, I forced myself not to care because I loved money. I quietly walked to Marcus's side and patted his shoulder. His gaze fell on me. I clearly saw the smile in his eyes fade a little. I put on a serene smile, gently brushed the hair from his forehead, and said in a soft tone, "Sorry. I had to work late today. I'm a little late." He finally came back to his senses, took my hand, and rubbed it, frowning slightly. "Is the heat not on high enough? Why are your hands still so cold?" "It's probably the temperature difference between inside and outside. My body hasn't adjusted yet." "Did I make you cold?" I said, trying to pull my hand back. Marcus instinctively tightened his grip. "I'm worried you'll catch a cold." The once noisy room gradually quieted down. The atmosphere became strangely tense for a few seconds, and then I heard someone say playfully, "Marcus, is this your elusive girlfriend? Now that she's finally shown her face, aren't you going to introduce her?" I followed the voice to its source. The speaker was a man in a flashy baseball jacket, sitting next to Jasper, looking every bit the playboy. Jasper leaned back lazily, fiddling with a lighter. Click, snap, click, snap. It was his standard tick when he was agitated. Marcus stood up, his arm around my waist, and walked towards the crowd. "All right, let me introduce everyone. This is Willow, my girlfriend." "What girlfriend? She's already wearing a ring. When are you inviting us to the wedding?" Someone with sharp eyes noticed the ring on my finger and teased. My hand instinctively clenched, then relaxed. Marcus's body tensed for a moment. Then he returned to normal. "As long as you have your wedding gifts ready, I can get married anytime." Someone was about to tease more, but Marcus defended me. "She's shy. You can tease me, but don't mess with her." The teasing only grew louder. Marcus was pulled away by his friends for drinks. With nothing to do, I sat quietly in the corner, playing on my phone. Actually, there wasn't much to play. I didn't like reality shows, didn't play games, didn't read novels, and didn't scroll through short videos. I liked to daydream. but daydreaming in such a lively atmosphere would be too out of place. So I started eating. Slowly. In small bites. I ate the pastries on the coffee table. I hadn't had dinner yet, so I was a little hungry. I sat in that room for 2 hours and 19 minutes. I ate a plate of mung bean cakes, 3 cherry tomatoes, and drank 2 glasses of juice. Behind me, a pair of eyes watched me the entire time, but I never once turned around. It was already past midnight when the party ended. Marcus had drunk too much and was a bit unsteady on his feet. Several girls wanted to help him, but Marcus waved them away, finally choosing his closest childhood friend. As for me, I was responsible for his coat and car keys, ready to be a qualified driver. Halfway to the car, Marcus groggily turned and called my name. Willow. I replied softly. I'm here. In the parking garage, I opened the rear door, watched his friend struggle to help him into the car, and said goodbye to the others. I got in, ready to start the engine, when my gaze unintentionally fell on the 2 coats on the passenger seat. I realized I had forgotten my scarf, but his friend had already closed the door and was waiting for me to drive. Forget it. It wasn't anything valuable. If it was forgotten, it was forgotten. Before leaving, I finally couldn't resist glancing at Jasper in the rearview mirror. He was turned to the side, his head bowed as he lit a cigarette, a cold aura emanating from him. I looked away and silently curled my lip, a mocking gesture to the naive girl I once was. The car entered Marcus's garage. I had originally planned to stay and take care of him, but the Song family had plenty of servants. It really wasn't my place. His childhood friend also tactfully suggested that Marcus's parents preferred sensible and discreet girls. Since Marcus hadn't formally introduced me to them, I should be more tactful. So at 2 in the morning, I tactfully stood in the cold outside this luxurious villa complex for half an hour, finally getting a ride. Share. The big city was great. You could even get a ride in the middle of the night. But forgetting my scarf was a real disaster. The winter wind was bone-chilling. I was almost blown into a state of facial paralysis. By the time the car reached my apartment complex, it was already 3 in the morning. I dragged my tired feet. The elevator doors opened, and I fumbled for my keys. A strong smell of smoke hit my nose. I dazedly looked up, wondering if someone's apartment was on fire. Then I saw a tall man standing at my door. A thick pile of cigarette butts lay at his feet. A red, hot ember glowed between his long fingers. In his other hand, he held my forgotten scarf. I had never really imagined what it would be like to meet Jasper again. When I was young, I felt he had hurt me deeply. It's no exaggeration to say that I felt like my world had collapsed. I was in a daze, with no will to live. But time passes, and I realized it was just a small matter of, I love you. You don't love me. In this life, money, work, health, isn't any of that more important than love? Besides, I was really tired today. Once you pass a certain age, your body's functions start to decline. Now, if I go to bed after 11, my brain is just a mush. I can't think at all. So I just numbly opened the door, numbly changed into my slippers, and numbly turned to close the door. Jasper reached out and blocked my action. We had a thing once. You're not even going to say hello? That's just rude. Perhaps from smoking too much. His voice was a bit hoarse. Sometimes I think my thinking is too conservative. I can't understand this lifestyle of maintaining good relationships with many exes, keeping in touch privately, and even rekindling old flames when the mood is right. I once discussed this with my best friend. As someone who had gotten back into bed with an ex, she said it was perfectly normal. She said it was because of nostalgia. Like a toy you loved as a child. You don't like it anymore when you grow up. But that doesn't stop you from picking it up with fond memories when you see it again. I couldn't understand it at the time. But shouldn't people be faithful in a relationship? My friend laughed at my naivety. This era has given a new definition to the word fidelity. We call people who are devoted to love until death. Love. Struck fools. And someone like you, who gives so much to Jasper with such one-sided devotion. So earnest it's ridiculous. We call a lapdog. At that time, to understand Jasper's thinking, I seriously hung out with my best friend for a while. She took me to all sorts of places, introduced me to all sorts of different people. Unfortunately, I was never a smart student. I could never learn their lifestyle. In the end, I had to accept that Jasper and I were not from the same world. His steps would never pause for me. He didn't love me. Not at all. In fact, he had only gotten with me in the first place to laugh at me. I had clumsily followed him around, racking my brains to make him happy, going to great lengths to be good to him. I took a 2-hour bus from one side of the city to the other just because he casually mentioned he wanted to eat braised pork ribs. So I rushed to make them and bring them to him. In Jasper's eyes, all my efforts were probably cheap and laughable. But what could I do? I was just an ordinary woman, with no shining qualities to attract anyone's attention. The only thing I had was my sincerity. I reverently dug out my own heart and offered it to Jasper. He took it, looked at it, examined it from all angles, found it uninteresting, and casually tossed it aside. And so, my sincere heart was shattered. Later, I collected the pieces and realized I had used the wrong method. A true heart can't be exchanged for another true heart, but it can be exchanged for money. Marcus gave me a lot of feedback. Every time he found a new confidant, he would give me an expensive gift, from jewelry to handbags. His guilt was very valuable. For example, the fact that I had to take a taxi home alone today. When Marcus sobered up tomorrow, he would probably buy me another handbag. I just wanted the bag. I didn't want any more involvement with an ex who had hurt me so deeply. So I held the doorknob and looked at Jasper for a long time. His expression was obscured by the hazy smoke. Or perhaps the light was too dim. I really couldn't see clearly. I asked him, "Are you here to return my scarf?" He said, "No." I nodded and seriously pushed his arm away from the door. This time, I was finally able to close the door and lock it. I started being called out by Marcus more frequently to hang out with his friends. Of course, every time, Jasper was among his friends. After hanging out more, Marcus would inevitably talk about his friends' situations. And so I finally learned Jasper's current identity. A hot new race car driver. The long-lost young master of the Jiang family. It was amazing. The Jasper I knew was a rebellious teenager who had grown up with his grandmother. He did love cars. But at that time, he wasn't well off. He could only ride a shabby second-hand motorcycle around town. In our brief relationship, the most memorable scene was probably him putting a heavy helmet on my head, telling me to hold onto his waist as I sat on the back of the motorcycle, and saying he would take me far away. At that time, I really believed he would take me far away, in front of Marcus's friends. I never shied away from showing my meticulous and comprehensive care for him. His friends would tease at first, but after seeing it more, they got used to it. Of course, whether they were disdainful or envious of it behind my back, I didn't want to know. As for Marcus's pregnant confidant, I didn't know how he handled it, but Marcus's attitude towards me remained the same, which reassured me a little. But there was still a faint anxiety growing inside me. It was probably because of the almost undisguised, aggressive way Jasper looked at me every time we met. Or perhaps because Marcus seemed unenthusiastic and unconcerned about our wedding date. I always worried that things would change. And sure enough, they did. During a weekend camping trip, Marcus suddenly got a call. His face immediately darkened. He just said he would talk about it when he got home. A little while later, Marcus announced he had something urgent to attend to and had to go home first. Instantly, I felt several veiled glances fall on me. I had come in Marcus's car. If he was leaving, and I didn't know the others well, I would naturally have to leave too. But Marcus was clearly not in the mood to take me home. I was thinking of maybe taking his car down the mountain and then getting a taxi home, when I heard Jasper suddenly speak up. "Marcus, if you have something to do, go ahead. I'll give your girlfriend a ride back later." As soon as he finished, Marcus casually nodded. "All right, thanks for that." Clearly, Marcus didn't care whether I stayed or left. I froze mid-motion as I was getting up, then slowly sat back down. Before he left, Marcus gave me a deep look. I had a strong feeling that once he left, this would probably be the end for us. So, for the first time ever, I took the initiative and made a request. "Marcus, I want to go with you. Be good." "Listen." Marcus frowned, stepped on the gas, and drove off. I stood there, my phone vibrating twice. It was a message. I looked down. It was from the confidant, who had been quiet for a long time. She told me she had gone to see Marcus's parents. and they had already agreed to let her marry him. A warm body appeared behind me. Jasper, without any hesitation, leaned over, looked at my phone screen, and let out a lazy laugh. She moves fast. My eyelashes trembled. I looked up at him. Willow. She has a good family background, a beautiful face, and now she's carrying Marcus's child. What do you have to compete with her? I thought you would have known to back down after you met in the coffee shop that day. You don't really think that just by endlessly pleasing Marcus, he'll marry you, do you? Of course. Marcus would have married me if Jasper hadn't interfered. But the matter had already reached his parents. The probability of him marrying me now was very slim. I was a little disappointed, but there was also a sense of resigned finality. From the day I saw Jasper again, I knew my plan wouldn't go smoothly. I silently put away my phone, ready to pack my things and take a taxi home. This campsite was a bit remote, so it wouldn't be easy to get a taxi. But it didn't matter. I would rather walk for 2 hours down the mountain than get into Jasper's passenger seat. Charging cable, water bottle, sunglasses. I stuffed everything into my bag. Jasper followed behind me, his expression displeased, watching my every move. Finally, he exploded, snatching my bag and throwing it into the distance. The contents of the bag scattered on the ground. The surroundings instantly fell silent. Inquiring eyes darted back and forth between me and Jasper. I glanced at the bag, feeling a little sad. It was quite expensive. If Jasper hadn't been here today, I probably would have scurried over to pick everything up. But right now, I just felt exhausted, body and soul. Excuse me. You guys have fun. I'm heading back, I said, trying my best to remain calm, to keep my voice from trembling. But the sight of me turning to leave, empty-handed, looked pathetic no matter how you spun it. Jasper's body was tense. He reached out and gripped my arm, his grip strong. I stopped, raised my hand, and gave him a heavy slap across the face. I could even hear gasps from those around us. The slap made Jasper's head turn to the side, but his grip on me never loosened. Feel better? If not, want to slap this side too? He asked, pointing to the other half of his face. I didn't want to argue with Jasper in public, especially not in front of this group of young masters and ladies who had never given me the time of day. Perhaps the look on my face was just too stubborn and pathetic. Jasper bit his cheek, relented, and let go of my arm, taking a step back. Sorry. I widened my eyes, took a shallow breath, and forced back the moisture in my eyes. He bent down and put all my scattered belongings back into the bag, then held it. I'll take you home. On this one thing. He wouldn't budge. I didn't dare to look at the expressions of the onlookers anymore. Jasper was driving a very conspicuous sports car. Seeing me hesitate to get in, he couldn't help but sigh. It's so cold out. If you don't take my car, how will you get back? I'm not a human trafficker. I won't sell you. I stood there, my face blank, and told him, I don't know how to open the door of this car. Marcus also had a sports car, but as everyone knows, the passenger seat of a sports car is reserved for a beauty. Clearly, I didn't qualify. So, to this day, I had never ridden in a car with such a low chassis and an unusual door mechanism. Jasper probably didn't expect my reason for not getting in to be so refreshingly unconventional. He paused for a second, then opened the door for me. Get in. On the way back, I was on edge the entire time. Perhaps it was a habit from being a race car driver, but Jasper drove very aggressively. I even suspected at one point that he had removed the car's brake pads. Several times, the car scraped dangerously close to the mountainside. I squeezed my eyes shut, afraid that in the next second, I would have a bloody, intimate encounter with a solid rock. My adrenaline was soaring. I gripped the seatbelt tightly. Finally, as Jasper took another high-speed turn, I couldn't help but scream. Stop. The screech of brakes filled the air. My body lurched forward with inertia, then was yanked back by the seatbelt. A faint click sounded. It was Jasper lighting a cigarette, taking a drag. You'd rather be a stepmother than break up with Marcus. Why? Do you really love him that much? I was still shaken and didn't want to answer his question just yet. You should have known when we broke up. You and we are not from the same world. You should find a good man and live a simple, ordinary life. Jasper rolled down the window, his hand holding the cigarette resting casually on the frame. He turned to look at me. Willow, Break up with Marcus. I just found it laughable. Jasper, don't you feel any guilt saying that? By what right? In what capacity? Are you interfering in my love life? Have I ever done anything to wrong you? Have I ever relentlessly pestered you? Why is it that all your other exes get your sincere blessings, but you just can't stand to see me happy? I wasn't conceited enough to think that Jasper still had feelings for me. His attitude towards me was probably just as my best friend had once said. Something that once belonged to you. Even if you throw it away, you don't want anyone else to have it. In Jasper's eyes, I should find an ordinary, uninteresting man he didn't know. Someone who wasn't particularly rich or outstanding. That was all I deserved. I couldn't reach Jasper's level, nor could I reach the level of his friends. Jasper, I have never hurt you, I said sadly, looking at him. Let me go. Just pretend we never met. I never regretted loving Jasper, but if I could live my life over again, I would choose to never meet him. Jasper stared at me, not speaking. I sniffled, my nose sour, and lowered my head, my trembling hands trying to unbuckle the seatbelt. A strong force pressed my shoulders firmly against the seat. I looked up in alarm, and before I could make a sound, Jasper grabbed my chin and kissed me forcefully. My gasp was muffled. I struggled desperately, but the more I struggled, the deeper he kissed. My lip was bitten and bleeding. The taste of blood filled our entangled lips and tongues. I whimpered softly, but Jasper wouldn't let go. He kissed her with such desperation. But why? I was the one who should be desperate. My struggles grew weaker. I closed my eyes, tasting only bitterness. When you're sad, your tears are truly bitter. I'm actually a person who cries easily, but I don't like to cry in front of people. Maybe because I'm the middle child at home, the one who is always overlooked. Not as charming as my older sister, not as doted on as my younger brother. I got used to my feelings being ignored by others. Gradually, even I stopped caring much about my own feelings. A sentimental piece of music, a few pitiful images. They could easily bring tears to my eyes. But when it came to my own affairs, I rarely had emotional fluctuations. The only 2 times were because of Jasper. Once, I cried and asked him if we could not break up. Now, I cried and asked him if he could let me go. Unfortunately, Jasper's answer to me was always no. He took me home. The car was parked downstairs for a long time. Finally, he handed me a bank card. His voice hoarse. Swipe it however you want. So generous. He said if I really refused to leave this circle, he was a better fit for me than Marcus. At least, he wouldn't demand my endless devotion under the guise of loving me. He could give me anything, except marriage. I took the card and examined it carefully. A pure black card. Special material. Very different from a regular bank card. When I had looked my fill, I put the card back in Jasper's wallet and told him, I don't want anything but marriage. I had always known, from the very beginning, what I wanted. Jasper could not give me. Marcus was out of touch for a few days. Every message I sent him went unanswered. It was probably for the best. Otherwise, I would have had to explain the cut on my lip when we met, chatting with my best friend about it. She said I just had bad luck. She said Jasper was my jinx, that nothing good ever happened to me when I was involved with him. She also scolded me for refusing his black card, saying that since he had taken such advantage of me, I should at least get some money back as compensation. But what was done was done. She told me to relax. At least Jasper was handsome and well built, so I hadn't lost out too much. She had said all she could, both good and bad. I could only remain silent. At the end of the workday, I walked out of the company right on time. I saw Marcus, who had been missing for days, leaning against his BMW, one hand coolly in his pocket, smiling at me. Marcus rarely came to pick me up from work, but every time he did, he would bring a bouquet of flowers. I had to admit, the reason I was willing to be a stepmother to marry him wasn't just because he was a rich heir. Some gestures, even if you know they're just insincere routines, really work on a girl. Otherwise, how could players be so popular? There's a reason. But Marcus didn't bring flowers today. There was even a hint of exhaustion in his eyes. I guessed he was probably here to break up with me. He really didn't have to go to such trouble. He could have just called me or sent a message. He could have even done nothing. If he just stayed away from me, I would have had the self-awareness not to bother him anymore. For example, I had sent him messages for 5 consecutive days, and he hadn't replied. If he hadn't come to find me today, we would have just ended it like that. Marcus took me to an expensive Japanese restaurant and spent the whole time taking care of me. The roles of caregiver and cared for were reversed, which made me very uncomfortable. So halfway through the meal, I took the initiative to speak. If you have something to say, just say it. I didn't feel that Marcus owed me anything. From the beginning, I knew what kind of person he was. All my efforts for him were willing, with an expectation of return. If we could be together for a lifetime, that would be great. If not, I was no different from his previous ex-girlfriends who had parted amicably. We could still smile and greet each other if we met again. Marcus put down his chopsticks, took a deep breath, and looked at me seriously. I looked back at him. Willow, let's get married. I had considered many possibilities. What excuses Marcus would use, what compensation he would give me, but I had never once considered that he would marry me. I ran into some trouble these past few days, Marcus said, looking a little embarrassed. This isn't really fair to you, but I'm selfishly asking you to stay. I unexpectedly have a child on the way. The mother insists on having it. Marcus didn't dare to look at me. Although I have a responsibility to support the child, rest assured, I won't let it affect our relationship. And the child won't be on my household registration. I promise you, on my household registration, there will only be our children. I was stunned for a long moment before asking, doesn't the mother mind? This is the result of my negotiations with her. We can only say we were both too young and made a mistake. Young. Such a convenient excuse. It seemed that as long as you pulled out this banner, all your wrongdoings could be forgiven. But what did that have to do with me? I just wanted to marry Marcus. So I slowly nodded and agreed. Okay, let's get married. Marcus began to prepare for the wedding with an unprecedented enthusiasm, as if he was afraid I would change my mind. But he was really overthinking it. How could I possibly change my mind? On an auspicious day, Marcus formally took me home. His parents' attitude towards me was lukewarm. They were polite enough, but when it came to the actual wedding, they said we needed to sign a prenuptial agreement. After all, my willingness to be a stepmother to marry him made it hard for them not to question my motives. Marcus was feeling guilty towards me, so he was very against it. But he couldn't win against his parents. Their agreement to our marriage was already a big step back. If he pushed further, the wedding might be called off, and that would be a greater loss. I didn't care. Marrying Marcus was already a step up in social class for me. One can't be too greedy. Besides, my material desires weren't that high. With Marcus's generosity, whatever slipped through his fingers would be enough for me to live very comfortably. I wanted to get married, have a child, and for that child to have a good material life, to be loved by their parents, and to grow up to find a lifelong partner and live a happy life. I hoped that all the things I couldn't have, all my regrets, could be fulfilled in my child. Marcus could give me all of that. What more could I be dissatisfied with? My parents' reaction to my impending marriage was flat. But when they found out Marcus was a rich heir, their attitude changed immediately. They had never placed their hopes on me. Their only requirement for me was not to be a burden on the family. So I had lived on scholarships since I was a child, but I was never a genius. Every point I earned was through long nights of hard study. As the overlooked child, I had to help take care of my younger brother, run errands for my older sister, and do a lot of housework. My parents had high hopes for my sister, hoping her beauty would land her a rich man who could provide a lot for my brother. They always said my brother was the pillar of the family, and we all had to be good to him. As for me, as long as I had food to eat, it was fine. I grew up in the shadows, never becoming a particularly outstanding person, nor a rebellious one. I was a dim star, my light faint, not at all eye-catching. So when I grew up and seriously thought about the past, I felt it wasn't surprising at all that I was hurt by Jasper. I was just a pitiful creature starved for love, happily thinking I had found my salvation, only to step into an abyss. My greatest flaw is my inability to love myself. I always hoped someone would love me without reservation, see through my feigned strength to the sensitive and fragile person underneath, and then embrace me tightly. But there was nothing remarkable about me. Why should anyone love me? But a person's fate is indeed unpredictable. Although I didn't find a lover, I found a suitable husband. No one expected that the quiet, unassuming me would find a rich heir through my own charming personality. Marcus was rich. The kind of rich that could elevate my entire family. So my parents made a special trip, traveling 1,000 miles to discuss with me how much of a bride price they should ask for from the Song family. In the cramped rental apartment, my parents and brother enthusiastically discussed buying a house for my brother once the bride price arrived. My sister looked around my home with a disdainful and jealous expression. I quietly lowered my eyes, a wave of nausea churning in my stomach. This wasn't the first time I felt I had a disgusting family, but it was the first time the nausea was so overwhelming that I gagged. Instantly, the lively living room fell silent. All my relatives' eyes fell on me. With a strange, feverish intensity, my mother tentatively asked, "Are you pregnant?" My face instantly turned deathly pale. My sister looked at me, a look of realization dawning on her face. No wonder you could marry a rich man. So it was an unplanned pregnancy. That's a good move. My mother happily got up, wanting to help me to the sofa, chiding, "You child, why didn't you say something so important earlier?" My brother's face was full of excitement. "So sister is carrying the Song family's heir. Does that mean we can ask for more bride price? It should at least be double, right?" My father showed a look of disapproval. "We can't be too greedy, or they'll think we're selling our daughter. We have to play the long game. A bride price of 300,000 should be enough. When you graduate from college, we'll have your brother-in-law arrange a good job for you, and then find you a rich wife. That's what matters for a lifetime." My hands trembled. I pressed them to my mouth. Disgusting. So disgusting. Every cell in my body was screaming with nausea. I couldn't hold it back any longer. I ran to the bathroom, hugged the toilet, and threw up completely. I wanted to marry Marcus. I wanted to marry a rich man. I wanted to live a good life. I wanted to escape my family. I had wanted so many things. My success was within reach. But I suddenly realized with despair that I couldn't do it. I might be pregnant, but the child couldn't possibly be Marcus's. I firmly denied being pregnant, saying only that I was stressed from wedding preparations. Of course, they didn't believe me. They weren't fools. I told them that Marcus's parents were traditional and didn't like women who had premarital sex as their daughters-in-law. So Marcus and I had always been proper. If they didn't believe me and made a scene, the Song family would most likely call off the wedding. Marcus was an excellent catch. There were plenty of women who wanted to marry him. My parents immediately backed down. They were so close to the finish line. They were terrified of the cooked duck flying away. I took half a day off from work to go to the hospital for a check-up. The result was the one I was least willing to accept. My best friend gave me 2 suggestions. First, get an abortion, keep it a secret, and continue with the wedding preparations. Marcus cheated on me all the time, so I really shouldn't have a guilty conscience. Second, make Jasper take responsibility. Of course, he would never marry me, but I could get a large sum of money, get an abortion, and start over in a new city. My future wouldn't be too bad. She repeatedly told me to stay rational and not make any impulsive decisions. I knew what she meant. Growing up together, she knew me too well. My soul was too fragmented. My rational mind told me to be a clear-headed, selfish person. Since no one else cared about morals, I shouldn't either. I had given a lot. Whatever I got, I deserved. But the books I had read, the words I had seen, my education and my soul were all telling me I was wrong. I didn't want to be an immoral person. I had things I truly wanted. I just didn't deserve them. So I hated myself. I was clear-headed and yet sinking, happy and yet in pain. I was about to be torn apart by myself. I thought I should make a decision. I called Marcus and asked to meet him. I rarely called him. After all, his life was so full. What if my call interrupted his fun? Messaging was a good option. If he was willing, he would reply. If not, he would pretend he didn't see it. Marcus rushed over. As soon as he sat down, he eagerly asked me what was wrong. "Willow, I just realized you've barely ever called me," Marcus said with a smile. "That won't do. You need to be a little clingier." His phone was on the table. The screen lit up. I saw the caller ID. Bianca, the pregnant confidant. Lately, whenever I was with Marcus, he would often get a call from her. He hadn't lied to me. The child wouldn't affect our relationship, nor would it be on his household registration. But he was still the child's father. The confidant had a legitimate reason to ask him to accompany her to prenatal check, UPS, buy baby supplies, and decorate the baby's room. So, when we were trying on wedding dresses, booking hotels, choosing a wedding planner, the confidant's calls were everywhere. Marcus would always look at me apologetically while answering the phone with suppressed impatience. Love is truly irrational. The confidant was so much more outstanding than me, yet she still fell for love. I couldn't even imagine being her. The world would be my oyster. Why would I even need a man? But none of that mattered to me anymore. I took off the diamond ring from my middle finger and pushed it towards him. Here, I should give this back to you. Marcus's smile froze. I'm sorry, Marcus. I can't marry you, I said softly, looking at him. I cheated on you. Marcus absolutely did not believe I would cheat on him. Perhaps my image as a virtuous and sensible woman was too deeply ingrained. No matter how I explained, he just thought I was throwing a tantrum. He promised me he would not let the child's affairs interfere with our time together in the future and would be doubly good to me. He even swore to cut ties with all his other female friends. Finally, I had to show him my pregnancy test report. Karma is a cycle. He cheated and had a child. I cheated and also had a child. From this perspective, at least in this relationship, neither of us owed the other anything. Marcus only glanced at the report before crumpling it into a ball. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and said to me, I did do a lot of things to wrong you in the past. Now we're even. Get an abortion, and I'll pretend nothing happened. I'm sorry, Marcus. I want to have this child. My personality was already twisted. This child was my only hope. He was tethering me, stopping me from sinking further. I still wanted to struggle in the light. I didn't want to fall completely into darkness. Who is the father? It doesn't matter. This is my child alone. After I refused Jasper's black card, I had completely cut ties with him. I blocked all his contact information and never answered unknown numbers. I no longer attended any events where he would be present. The news of Marcus's impending marriage had already spread through his circle of friends. With Jasper's pride, he would never look at me again in this lifetime. This was good. Never seeing each other again was the best ending for me and Jasper. But Marcus suddenly asked, It's Jasper's, isn't it? I was shocked for a second, then tacitly agreed. Right. I should have guessed. I couldn't hide it from Marcus. After all, at that camping trip, I had slapped Jasper in front of several people. Not only was he not angry, he insisted on taking me home himself. Any adult would understand what that meant. I just didn't expect that Marcus had clearly known about this for a while, but had never mentioned it to me. On second thought, maybe in their circle, my current girlfriend is your ex-girlfriend, was a perfectly normal thing. Marcus asked me, Did you ever love me? I looked at him in surprise. Marcus laughed. When I broke up with my exes before, they always asked me this question. I found it so annoying at the time. It's a consensual thing between adults. Why do they have to humiliate themselves? He was laughing, but his voice gradually lowered. The tables have turned. Today, I finally know how they felt. I pursed my lips. You're probably just having a hard time accepting that I'm the one breaking up with you. After all, very few women would voluntarily break up with Marcus. Can you believe it? Before today, I thought you were the one who couldn't leave me, Marcus said, looking at me with a smile. But it turns out, it was me. The one who was always so careful, so afraid of breaking up, was the one who initiated it. The one who was always detached, ready to leave at any moment, was the one begging her to stay. Marcus asked me, Do you want to consider letting me be a stepdad? I thought I had misheard. What did you say? Just kidding, Marcus said with a mischievous wink. I looked at him and said nothing. All right, I'll stop teasing you. Marcus sighed. Fine. Since you've made your decision, I can only respect it. But are you sure you want to be a single mother? It will be very hard. I finally managed a small smile. Thank you for letting me go. Being able to part peacefully was all I could ask for. We had said pretty much everything that needed to be said. I stood up and said goodbye. Out of courtesy, Marcus offered to take me home. I refused. He nodded and didn't insist. You go first then. I'll sit here a bit longer. As I reached the door, I couldn't help but look back at him. He was still sitting there, fiddling with the ring in his hand. I found a new place to live and prepared to move. Before everything was settled, I didn't tell my parents that I had broken up with Marcus. After all, I had a lot to deal with recently and didn't have the energy to handle their tantrums. I made a detailed plan and followed it meticulously. On my way home from work, I was thinking about maternity centers. Since I couldn't count on my elders for help, I had to be prepared. I'll check out a few places when I have time off. As I was thinking this, the elevator arrived. I was carrying my groceries, about to step out. Then I saw a familiar scene. Jasper was standing at my door. The ground was littered with cigarette butts. He still had an unextinguished cigarette between his fingers. Hearing the sound, he looked up, his eyes dark. This time, my reaction was to immediately turn around and frantically press the close button. But Jasper was faster than the elevator doors. Before the doors could close, he reached out and blocked them. Then, step by step, he walked into the elevator, closing in on me. I backed away until my back was against the elevator wall, with nowhere to go. My voice trembled. Let's talk this out calmly. You don't answer my calls. You block me. You avoid me. Willow, is this your idea of talking things out calmly? His gaze fell to my stomach. After a long moment, a slow smile spread across his lips. Carrying my child and not telling me. Got some nerve, don't you? His tone was gentle, but I knew that the angrier he was, the gentler his tone became. I didn't want you to be responsible. I promise. I won't bother you. I tried to get him to let me go. So obedient, Jasper said, gently caressing my cheek. Should I be praising you? I whimpered, barely able to make a sound. In front of Jasper, I had never had a chance to resist. Jasper looked at me for a long time, then sighed. Forget it, he said. Willow, I've already given you 2 chances. There won't be a third. Let's be entangled for a lifetime. Love or hate, until death do us part. The end. Epilogue. Jasper was a thorough villain. He had only done one good deed in his life, and that was breaking up with Willow. He knew from the beginning that they were not from the same world, that they could never truly merge. But he still indulged his selfish desires, fulfilled his own greed. He was too addicted to Willow's warmth. The closer he got, the more obsessed he became. Before he was completely lost, with no turning back, he chose to break up. He was terrified of the feeling of his emotions being completely controlled by another person. He wanted to smile whenever he saw Willow, and he was agitated when he couldn't. He didn't want that. So he let himself rot in the darkness, sinking deeper and deeper into the bottomless abyss. He let Willow see his ugliest side. He thought, this is good. After having a heartless ex like me, Willow will definitely not be fooled by men in the future. He was not a faithful or devoted person. After breaking up with Willow, he didn't think about her much. After his true identity was revealed, he had a whole new status and played even more freely. Anyway, he was just a rotten person, without a soul, his body empty, with nothing to fill it. So he liked extreme sports. Only at the crossroads of life and death did he feel alive. Very occasionally, he would remember Willow's face. In that illusory world where everyone's face was a blur, only Willow was the sole reality. Jasper and Willow met again in that coffee shop. He heard Willow's conversation with Bianca. Willow would rather be a stepmother than break up with Marcus. In that moment, Jasper knew it was over for him. He clearly felt the chain that bound the beast within him loosen. He knew it was unwillingness, a person he wasn't even worthy of. Why was Marcus worthy? He watched as Willow took meticulous care of Marcus, just as she had once cared for him. And so Jasper tasted a new emotion, called jealousy. He was like a peeping Tom, torturing himself by watching Willow and Marcus together. The negative emotions in his heart building like a tidal wave, constantly trying to drown his reason. He wanted to be a good person, so he offered sincere advice, telling Willow to leave. She should find a good man and live a happy, stable life, not be hurt by scumbags time and time again. Willow's refusal was the last straw that broke his rational mind. He was never a good person anyway. Why pretend to be aloof? He thought. Whatever Marcus could give Willow, he could give her too. If Willow needed someone by her side, why couldn't that someone be him? But Willow refused. The one thing he was unwilling to give was marriage. But the one thing Willow wanted was marriage. What was so good about marriage? If she married Marcus, would he be completely devoted to her? Absolutely not. They would both cheat anyway. A marriage that couldn't even maintain basic fidelity. What was the point of it? During the time Willow was avoiding him, Jasper developed a new habit. Every day, he would drive to her apartment building, hide downstairs, and quietly wait for the light in her apartment to turn on. He knew full well that light wasn't for him. But strangely, just seeing it brought him a sense of peace. He even accepted the fact that Willow and Marcus were getting married. The world is unfair. Someone was always luckier than him, easily obtaining the treasure he held so carefully. So much so that even admitting his desire felt like a profanity. His body, his soul, his love, they were all too dirty. He didn't dare to admit that when he first saw Willow again. His first feeling was regret. Regret for his past indulgence. Regret for not having lived his life well. But there were no second chances in life. So he could only put on a brave face, ignore everything, and in the end, even deceive himself. He always comforted himself. Forget it. It's fine. Let it be. They were never on the same path anyway. But there was always a faint voice in his heart, stubbornly rising from beneath the thick layers of pretense, questioning himself again and again. Why not me? Yes. Why not me? But alas, it just couldn't be me. In the end, Jasper and Willow did get married. They had a lovely child. A child who was showered with love. The happiest child in the world. They were, to the outside world, the most harmonious family. But Willow never asked about Jasper's private life. She didn't care if he cheated, if he had new lovers. She was like a kite, held by Jasper with a string called a marriage certificate. As long as he didn't let go, the kite would always be in his hand. But if he ever let go, the kite would fly away and never look back. But Jasper didn't mind. He carefully held that kite string, his eyes fixed on the kite. The man who once mocked fidelity the most was now desperately weaving a string of fidelity, trying to tie the kite firmly to his hand. Willow lived to be 80. She died peacefully. She had no last words, only wishing her children and grandchildren happiness. A month after she died, Jasper followed in her footsteps and also passed away. Before he died, he kept muttering, "The string is broken. My kite is gone." Jasper was a man of few words in his old age. Very few of his descendants could understand his thoughts. Only his granddaughter, who looked the most like Willow, heard this, powdered over with Willow's urn, and placed it in his arms. "Grandpa, your kite is right here." Jasper used the last of his strength to hold the urn, and finally closed his eyes peacefully. His kite was safe in his arms. As for Marcus had a question. His feelings for Willow, was it more dependence? Or more like, he was the one who told Jasper about Willow's pregnancy. His offer to be the father of Willow's child was not a joke. Perhaps human emotions are just too complicated. He thought about it his whole life. Eventually, when he couldn't figure it out, he stopped thinking about it. After all, whether he had figured it out or not, he had already lost.